After the disastrous blunder that was 2042, EA and DICE have another shot at making a true Battlefield game with Battlefield 6. Along with bringing Respawn Entertainment's Vince Zampella to lead development, DICE have already opened up the floodgates with testing the alpha build of Battlefield 6 and taking feedback from those playtests to help mold what the game will become on release. The alpha playtests are under NDA, but that hasn't stopped people from uploading and leaking footage of the game online. First, I do not have any access to the playtest, and secondly, to prevent this video from being taken down, I will not show any of that footage. The focus for today's video is to discuss the feedback EA and DICE have been receiving and give my thoughts on that feedback and where Battlefield's gameplay should stand. Allow me to be the first to say that I value feedback from players of any skill level. However, some decisions are going to be less popular than others. When looking at a game like Overwatch, the development team has continued to try and make every character meta or worth using at the exact same time. Unfortunately, that led to seasons of characters like Orisa and Mauga dominating the tank class and made the game less fun overall. We can also look at League of Legends, where the developers spend more time balancing the game based on the feedback of high-ranked and pro players, which can make it less fun or dynamic for lower skilled players such as myself and limit which characters are worth using in the first place. Call of Duty, depending on which development team is in charge, doesn't really take feedback at all. And if they do, it takes months for any meaningful changes to take effect. And if you want a more in-depth video talking about metas and how they affect different games, feel free to visit my video in that topic, which I may need to make a follow-up video for sometime later. When it comes to Battlefield, it honestly doesn't get any simpler than looking back at Battlefields 3, 4, and 1, and continuing to build off of those games and their systems. Battlefield 2042 tried to half-heartedly chase trends, which led to removing the classic role-based system Battlefield is known for, add specialists that can do a little of everything, and include an extraction mode called Hazard Zone that was quickly abandoned after the poor launch the game had. It really doesn't take a pro player to know what went wrong with 2042, and if I were in charge of finding some players to provide feedback for Battlefield 6, I can't really think of a better group than the squad, with Level Cap, Matimio, X Factor, and Jack Frags. If anyone knows what a good Battlefield game would play like, it would be these guys. Of course, there are other channels I would want to hear feedback from, such as Big Fry, Crash, Abel Green, and Enders, as well as everyone else. It's not to say I would build Battlefield 6 to be tailor-made for these content creators, but I would push to have more of their suggestions to be in the playtest and make some compromises along the way. There are a few reasons for this, so let's get into some of the feedback that has been given or talked about and where I stand on them. One of the complaints for Battlefield 6 is the movement speed being too fast, when in reality it's actually on par with the most popular Battlefield games out there. And while there has been an uptrend in games including faster movement or ways to increase the player's momentum speed, it doesn't really seem like Battlefield 6 is trying to follow suit. On top of that, for the sake of everyone's heads, I don't want the movement speed to be slowed down. Another big point to make is that some, if not most of this feedback are coming from people who haven't even played the playtest. They're just looking at it and saying it's too fast. I don't think I have to say it, but when it comes to video games, you don't really know what is or isn't fast until you get your hands on it and play it yourself. The same goes for weapon recoil, visual clutter, and other features that directly affect gameplay. Battlefield is known for having the largest maps in the genre, which means you will be doing a lot of running from objective to objective. Of course, there are a variety of vehicles to jump into, but sometimes that's just not possible. And in other situations, you may have a respawn beacon placed just outside of the objective, which means you will be on foot anyways if you primarily play infantry like myself. Having a slower running speed would make you an easier target for snipers, marksmen, and machine guns laying down suppressing fire, which can prevent you entirely from touching the objective ever again. This would be an even bigger problem if we get maps that are anything like Battlefield 2042's launch maps, with limited cover and very few ways to get from point to point without being in the open. You might find a running theme of players asking for more realism in Battlefield, but hopefully the developers will realize going that route would be overcorrecting the mistakes of 2042 and making a game that won't be as fun to play overall and drive players away. As much as I myself enjoy semi-realistic gameplay, I don't want it to be the default for Battlefield. It's fine if there's a separate game mode or someone makes a realism version in Portal mode, but Battlefield should feel accessible to as many players as possible. Not by chasing trends, but just making the game enjoyable for as many players as possible without going overboard. Realistic gameplay tends to not sell all that well in the grand scheme of things, and for a AAA game, you will rarely see that happen. I think in terms of movement speed for Battlefield 6, we are in the clear, and we won't see it be slowed down by the time the game launches. At least not drastically. To be clear, I'm not asking for hyper-mobile characters and straight-up omni movement that Black Ops 6 has. there are ways to make Battlefield speedy without going overboard. As it seems right now, Battlefield 6 may be in a good spot in that department. Hopefully, this explanation helps to better understand that it's a good thing. And if you're enjoying this discussion, please consider liking the video and subscribing for more discussions on Battlefield and other games. Battlefield has made some decisions with weapon recoil in the past, where they would release the game with weapon bloom, which means there is no set pattern for bullet spread and where the bullets would land on a target. Instead, your weapon would just become more and more inaccurate the further the target is, and the longer you held down the trigger. In my opinion, recoil bloom is an archaic gameplay mechanic that should only be used for special weapons like a mounted LMG that's a part of a building or vehicle, or for other games that are closer to milsims like Squad or Red Orchestra. You hear that, DICE and Infinity Ward? Random recoil patterns are stupid. Stop it. Get some help. Please. Right now, it seems Battlefield 6 will be using recoil patterns, which will help make every weapon feel both unique and reliable. The only concern I would have right now is to make sure no full auto weapons have zero recoil or are too reliable against targets past 40 meters. Battlefield should encourage burst firing and trigger discipline of some degree instead of turning every single weapon into a bullet hose and automatically winning mid-range gunfights. Again, there is a balance Battlefield has to find, where weapons are reliable but may need a few attachments to really be worth using in the long run. Other things like aim down sight times, reload speeds, animations, weapon sway, and visual clutter when firing the weapon need to be limited, and prevent having another Modern Warfare 2 situation where you're blinded by a puff of smoke every time you pull the trigger. Skill-based matchmaking, or SBMM, is a hot topic and one I've been wanting to make a video on for a while now. There's a lot to talk about SBMM directly, but let's keep this discussion specific to how it would affect Battlefield 6. First off, not all SBMM is created equal. For the past 5 years, Call of Duty has implemented a very strict system that really limits the fun the average player can have in the game. And Charlie Olson, who has helped to create SBMM for Call of Duty in the past, mentioned Apex Legends uses a similar system.
I mean, I don't know any other system exactly like it. I take that back. Apex, they've given some GDC talks about their matchmaker and about their skill system. And they started with something that's like not too different from what COD has, but COD has something that they didn't quite figure out either.
With that said, SBMM can be adjusted to be more relaxed and less manipulative than how it works right now in COD. When it comes to Battlefield, we will fortunately have at least one option to not really have to worry about it in the first place. If there is SBMM in Battlefield 6, I doubt we will see it be anywhere near as aggressive in this game compared to other titles. There may be a small amount of data EA and DICE will use to cue players into certain lobbies, but I doubt it will be crazy strict or even noticeable. At least when it comes to large 64-player game modes. There's a lot of chaos going on in a regular round of Battlefield that stacking teams with equally skilled players isn't really worth doing in the first place. As someone who solo queues a lot, I don't really play Battlefield to try and win games. Instead, I just try to hold down an objective that I have the most fun playing in and worry about my own performance, as well as reviving nearby teammates when possible. If for some reason EA and DICE crank up SBMM, we will at least have one option to avoid it by choosing servers in portal mode. And I do want to be clear, I am against strict SBMM. I do not want to see it in Battlefield or other games. I said this back before 2042 launched, and I still believe it today. Portal mode should become a mainstay for Battlefield, and I would like a similar system to be included in other games as well. For those who don't know what portal mode is, it allows players to create their own rule set and map rotations for the game. If you want to make a pistol-only mode with the smallest maps available, you can do that. If you want a vehicle-only mode, you can do that. Or you should be able to do that if the system works as intended. With 2042 being the first title to include portal mode, there were a lot of problems. It was confusing and complex to make your own mode and rule set, and the system also did not do a good job at preventing players from creating bot farming servers, which made it easier to unlock every item in the game. As far as we know right now, portal mode is set to come back with Battlefield 6. If it does, it needs a major rework in creating game modes, a proper server browser to filter out more extreme game modes that may be fun to play once or twice, but not all the time, and prevent players from creating bot farming servers that plagued 2042. There are other things to talk about with Battlefield 6, but I feel these are the biggest and most talked about packages right now. As time goes by and we get to see more of this game, we can discuss other possible issues that may occur later on. Thank you for getting this far in the video. Don't forget to leave a like and consider sharing the video around with other Battlefield fans. Let me know what you're looking for in Battlefield 6, and until then, I am Mr. Rain, and I'll see you next time.